dudes! Welcome back, you guys. I'm Tyler. As you saw in the intro video, I built this cool cart from my planer. And as you also saw, it's not just a regular cart. The top lowers below the frame, that way you can store it, like under a bench or under a shelf or under some crap you might have. I'm not too sure what your plans are. Let's go ahead and jump into the video, and if you want to hang around after the video, after the build, I'm going to talk to you about some problems that I encountered, some of the things that I fixed, some of the things I like and don't like about this still, and that also includes the reason why this is actually hanging out about 3 inches from the bench. It was unavoidable, just so you know, but just some things I want to go over. But let's go ahead and jump into the build and get this baby started. Starting with the legs, I cut 8 2x4s at 26 inches long. I clamped them here, and then I made pilot holes and then screwed 2.5-inch screws in. These are those nice Power Pro screws I've been telling you about, and it made some really sturdy legs. I used 2x3s for the base as well as the floating top. I labeled them S and L. L is 1/4 inch longer, and that's for the base, and S is for the floating top. I labeled them that way so I wouldn't forget. Right here, I'm adding in a 36 1/4 inch L piece between the two legs. Pay attention to the orientation of the legs and the way that the boards are fitting in with each other. It's important when you're fitting this together. I'm using 2x4s for the stretchers. The long ones are 32 1/4 inch in length, and the shorter ones are 20.5 inches. Now, I'm going to be pocket holing them into place and using these clamps to do so. I would double check the measurements though for you, just to make sure. These could be off a little bit, and you really want these to be spot on because your top's going to be floating inside. So do those measurements personally for your build to make sure everything's fitting perfect. I pocket holed another 24 1/4 inch L piece in the center, and then laid the plywood down and pre-drilled and then screwed my screws in. This is that point in an experimental project where you have to test to make sure, get like a proof of concept, and it actually worked out, so I was pretty pumped. I grabbed those S pieces and put them together. Again, make sure and recognize the orientation of these boards. The short ones are sandwiched in between the long ones. And I pocket holed these together for the frame of the floating top. I measured and added a couple 2x4s. Now these are 7 1/8 inch in from the outside, and that was center for me and fit the jack that I have. Again, I pocket hold them in here to hold everything in place. Now this would give me a nice spot underneath the plywood where I can mount my jack. Now these are 14 3/4 inch from either side, and then 1 1/4 inch inward from the outer edge there. And this is the little template that I'm going to be using to lay my jack stand down and then mark my holes and drill them for the bolts that I bought. I drilled the holes and then reamed them out a little bit so there was a little bit of wiggle room. Flipped it over and then added my plywood. Now what I'm going to do after I drill and screw everything together is I'm going to flip it back over and then follow those previously drilled holes through, kind of as a guide. With the holes done, I flip the top back over and use my speed square to kind of mark out. I'm going to add just a couple more screws here, just for stability. It'll also keep the sound down. But once these are all screwed in, that's really it for the top. We can move on. Nerds, I hope your build's going well. Don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button. I always forget to do this. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification icon if you want to get notified in the future when I drop new videos. It'll just give you a little notification that says Wood Nerds uploaded a new video. If you have any questions, hit the comment section below, or if you just want to say hi, I love hearing from you. But I'll let you get back to the build. Thanks. Now to install the top, I lift the jack up above the frame, set it on there. It actually was pretty easy. Fed the bolts through, and now I'm just checking the fit. So before I tighten everything down, I'm lining everything up and making marks on the base where I want to mount the jack. I then, just like normal, have been drilling and reaming out the holes. And there's only 2 bolt holes on the bottom, so I used these that scrap board to kind of help the weight distribution. I then put my casters up on the bottom, marked my holes, make sure that they're not hitting any of the previous screwed in screws, flip it over, and then drop these bolts in and then tighten them down after lining everything up. This process was pretty easy. The frame and everything is pretty square and the plywood's pretty square, so in my tests it worked out really well. It catches here and there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand all of the rough edges. So I used my belt sander with 80 grit sandpaper, took off as much material as I could, and then went with my orbital sander around all the edges a second time. I even lifted the top up a little bit, got underneath and all around the frame here. Just again, if anything touches, I want it to bind as little as possible. The jack isn't perfectly stable, and when in use, I want it to be rock solid. So I have these threaded brass inserts that I'm going to drill some holes and then be able to screw these knobs into, and that'll hold everything in place and keep it nice and sturdy. So to start off, I'm going 10 inches from the edge and 1 3/4 inch down from the top of the frame, and I'm drilling all the way through both the outer frame and then the frame for the top. Now I'm checking my depth here and how deep I want to go using this spade bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of tape to mark that depth, and then go ahead and take some material out. I do the same thing with the brass inserts on the top side only, and then I use these knobs to thread them in, which keeps everything nice and straight. It worked like a dream. And as you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and jump on and test out how solid it is. And with me shuffling around up here, it is seriously rock solid. It turned out awesome. With the top all the way down, it would still move around. So I added these little spacer blocks here, so when I brought the top down, it would rest on top of these, and it would keep it nice and flat. So that's it. Really wasn't a big deal. Took me about 2 days to complete, but that's because I had to do a lot of thinking in between. If I had this plan drawn out, which a lot of times I don't, I kind of just like build as I go. If I had this plan drawn out, I don't know what just happened. I probably could have completed it in a day. So some of the things that I don't like about this, one of them is the fact that it sticks out here. It's not a huge deal, honestly. It's still saving me a ton of space on my bench, or keeping the planer out basically anywhere. I would rather lose this than have it sit anywhere in the garage and then also have to lift it and move it around. But it's because of the dimensions of the planer. It's just a large, what they call a lunch box or job site planer. And so, I mean, that's something that I have to deal with. The other thing is, just to let you guys know, it's a little wobbly. As you lift and lower, I have to guide it every single time. That's not a problem for me. I don't know what the lifetime is going to be on that scissor jack. It's what's called like an RV leveling jack. It's not actually intended for lifting, but it has like a 5,000 pound weight limit for like leveling RVs. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I've raised and lowered this thing 150 times or so to test it out. I did encounter issues with my drill, and I think it's just because this is, like a 7-year-old drill or something, and I have not been nice to it. And my batteries are 2 or 3 years old, so I also haven't been nice to those. So I think that's probably my issue, but it kind of like will chug along to start when lifting, and then there's not an issue. So I think that has to deal with my drill. It is a little bit wobbly. I put those corner brackets so I could rest it down when it's all the way down. That way when you're storing it, it's not wobbling around. You don't have to worry about it shifting and anything sliding off, so that'll keep it nice and level. And then when it's lifted all the way and you use those knobs, here they are, those knobs and the brass threaded inserts, it holds it completely solid. As you saw, it jumped on top and was able to shuffle around a little bit. It held perfect. It completely solid. So that was a good solution to keeping that nice and steady when you're working with it. You don't want it moving around. So pretty cool little deal there. That's really it though. There's not a lot of things I can say I don't like about this.
A couple of really nitpicky things with my OCD that bother me, just like, you know, the wobbliness when it's lifting, that kind of bugs me, but I can't think of a solution to solve that. So if you guys think of something or you know something that'll work, put it down below, because I would like to implement it on here just so I can sleep a little better at night. I'm honestly completely pumped about this thing. I love that I can store this out of the way. I'm excited to start using this planer, and I'm gonna have some videos coming out in the future, some reviews, and I bought a bunch of cool upgrades for the planer. Not like the helical head yet, I'm gonna wait on that one, I think, but I do have some cool little upgrades here and there that are gonna make life with a planer a little bit easier. So keep an eye out for that video, and if you guys have any recommendations, leave them down below, or questions. I'll try to get back to you guys. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.